Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for the kind introduction. I will say, listen to Lorena's context setting. I wish I could borrow her to do that with some sessions in Congress. The values that are being espoused, making it a safe space where people with irreconcilable differences can discuss them respectfully and maybe find some ways to move forward in these troubled times. I think you've got exactly the right tone. I think it's a model that we all should emulate. Nathan's right. I have been involved in an effort for almost 50 years to end the failed war on drugs. I am proud that Oregon pioneered decriminalization of cannabis. It was very impactful for me watching how people, before a lot of things were toxic with Nixon's failed, cruel, cynical war on drugs, were able to actually have some interesting conversations. And we had bipartisan support moving forward. The most powerful speech I ever heard was from a Republican conservative pig farmer from Eastern Oregon who walked people through substances that were really dangerous, tobacco, alcohol, and I am told, and this was on a proposal actually to decriminalize 2 plants. I'm told by people who were knowledgeable, if the people, the 19 of us who voted for it, were joined by the people who voted no but smoked dope, Oregon would have been the first state to fully decriminalize cannabis. Powerful, powerful. I've loved working with the advocates on the campaign trail around the country in terms of movement that we've seen in terms of legalization of cannabis. There's been a sea change, and it has been driven by advocates at the local, people who are involved with the industry, people who are believers, people who care about civil liberties, about health. And it's a movement that has gathered momentum all across the country now. 97% of Americans have access to some form of cannabis that is legal. It's been a sea change in terms of public attitudes. Legislation that has moved haltingly, but nonetheless moving forward. We've passed safe banking 7 times in the House of Representatives. We have major reform in terms of the MORE Act. Sadly, what we've been doing over the course of my term in Congress, we passed good legislation and it's gone to the hospice in the Senate to die under the careful stewardship of Mitch McConnell. Something happened in the last election. Democrats are in charge. And the leadership of the Senate is no longer overtly hostile. The Senate Majority Leader, Cory Booker, who's involved with your issue here, our own Ron Wyden, are advocating major reform. It's a chance that we can actually get this across the finish line this year. And it's important because if the leadership flips, we're going to be, I don't know how long we'll be in the wilderness, but we're this close to getting it across the finish line. But I'm not going to bore you with more tales, war stories about cannabis legalization, although it's very, very important. And ending the failed war on drugs has implications that far extend, dealing with the racial injustices, mass incarceration, the destruction of the lives of, I don't know, 1 million young black men. The war on drugs' caustic effects linger, and we see them in evidence every day. The psilocybin revolution is a different approach that has, the, I think, capacity to help bring people together in a different fashion. I'm late to be on this bus. I had no experience with it, and I didn't really pay that much attention. I kind of swallowed some of the rhetoric about the dangers, the Timothy Leary, the weird stuff going on, bad trips, and it wasn't an area of serious concern for me. Until one day I was having lunch with a dear friend of mine, Michael Pollan. Some of you are aware of Michael. We'd been working over the years on food policy, health and nutrition. I found his analysis always compelling. And in the course of the lunch, I asked him, well, what's the next project? What's your next book? Psychedelics. And we proceeded to have a fascinating conversation. And Michael has the capacity to take complex and controversial issues, make sense out of them, and tie the pieces together. And it was a very illuminating lunch for me. I subsequently have read his books, I've attended his lectures, I was with him here when he was in Portland a month ago, watching this take hold. And I have become a convert. Working with the Eckerts on their campaign, trying to help both, I think I was the first or maybe the only elected official that was there in support of it. We helped with the campaign mechanics, some funding of the election. Starting a new era in our state. This is another area of pioneering activity for Oregon that I am very, very proud of. With our land use, with cannabis, transportation, we've set a number of records. But this, I think, has the potential to be as impactful as anything we've been involved with. The notion of what the approach that is being undertaken in a therapeutic, scientific, carefully crafted way to bring the public along, build the infrastructure and the momentum and the knowledge, I think is the model that ought to be considered in every state in the Union, and ought to be considered with the work that we're doing on the federal level to make progress. You know, it's interesting, I have a dozen bipartisan people in Congress who've joined me on some of the initiatives that were mentioned, the right to try, being able to engage efforts here for research. There is a foundation that we can build on. Kevin's right. We are honored to have you here with what is truly a path-breaking effort nationally in terms of an important reset. The impact that this will have on health, in terms of addiction. I'm the death panel guy. You may remember the big lie of the year 12 years ago, Sarah Palin talked about legislation that I had to have the federal government support an end-of-life conversation with terminally ill patients and their families to understand what was ahead of them. I had a real education about the impacts that that has on families. This therapy looks to me as an amazing breakthrough. So I will stop. I could go on and on and on, but you have really important people to hear. I fulfilled my role, which is to mark time so people can drift in after the evening's festivities. I'm used to that. That happens to me. It's a role I embrace, particularly in support of a cause in which I care so deeply about, and that you are truly on the cutting edge. Thank you for your efforts, your advocacy, what you will do going forward. I look forward to being your partner on the federal level and making sure that what we do here in Oregon realizes its full potential as a model for the rest of the country. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.